Hi, Lauren. Hey, how are you?
Hi there.
Hey, how are you?
Good evening.
We ran into a technical issue, so we're not, and for
Oh,
some reason, the YouTube live just ends abruptly.
oh no. Oh,
Yeah, so I'm just getting that message saying stream is finished.
oh, that's weird, right?
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
Are you seeing the stream is finished?
Sorry.
Are you also seeing the same message?
I am going on it right now. It says live now. It says one watch.
It's live now.
I
Hmm.
think,
I think we're live.
Yeah, we're live.
yeah.
Hmm. Awesome. So, well, after some glitches, some technical glitches, we are back online. We lost about 13 minutes of the show today, so I'm going to restart. And Lauren, you're just in time. Thank you so much for making it. So, as always, every Saturday we'll be bringing you the Baseline Show um, live from India. This is our own version of the Baseline Show International, which has been going on for over a year now. We're going to be talking about all things baseline protocol. Most importantly, today's show is all about the business value that can be drawn out of baseline protocol. And I'm glad to be joined by some of the cool and new baseliners, and of course, Lauren Gibson from Consensus Mesh. Thanks so much, Lauren, for making it. I'm spoiling your Saturday morning, but I think you'll have a good time today. Thanks so much for
Yeah.
making it. So I'll start around with, why don't we start with the first one to join the call today, which was Ajo John. Ajo, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Samrat. Thanks, everybody else. I am Ajo. I'm part of ICICI Bank. I'm part of their IT team and a student, perpetual student of blockchain. Very, very excited to understand what's happening in this space and have been hearing about blockchain for some time. Um, Now, when Samrat joined it with some official responsibility, it gave me to come in and see more closely what baseline is. And so here, that brings me here. Looking forward. Thanks.
Awesome, awesome. No, Ajay and I go back, many years when we were together in a banking consortium, blockchain banking consortium called BankChain here in India, and he belongs to the number one bank in the private sector. So thank you, Ajay, for your interest. I'm sure you're and just a disclaimer, you're not representing your bank. You're here as an individual, just for everybody's sake, because this video goes on YouTube and then people ask me questions. Next up is Mohan.
Hey, hi. I've been in Baseline for about 3 months now, maybe. Joined because I got introduced to Kyle by the founder of Nuts, who's a former colleague of mine. And I come from a traditional enterprise integration background. I actually built products for a company called TIPCO, which was one of the leaders in enterprise integration. So my curiosity was, what's the third generation of enterprise integration would be looking like? Because the first generation was companies like TIPCO, and then the second generation was, uh, you know, cloud-based providers, like Workato and Zapier, and potentially baseline is Gen 3. So I'm curious to see where it's going to go. I'm doing we're launching. I'm part of a team that is trying to launch some initiatives around blockchains. The one that we have going right now is trying to build a zero waste community, global community, but starting out of India. So it's basically centered around households, sort of helping households kind of get the understanding of their footprint on zero waste, and then together as a community improve their footprint, if you will, or reduce the footprint. So that's what we're doing.
No, that is awesome, Mohan, and thank you so much. And I know I'm spoiling your Saturday morning as well. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from New York. So we also have my college mate Anushree here. She's also working with a telecom giant in Malaysia. So Anushree, could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So I'm totally, probably very much a stranger to this line of baseline.
Yeah.
I'm currently working in Malaysia, and I'm basically a lead solution architect in IT domain that is I'm very much into telecommunication. So 13 plus years of experience into telecom. So I'm just up here to know what's all this about
Yeah,
because
that's the
I've
purpose.
been
That's the purpose of this office hours with Samrat Kishor every Saturday. And by the way, people watching this on YouTube, please smash the subscribe button. You need
Very
to
important.
yeah, that's very very important. You need to smash and you need to smash it, hit it really really hard, so that you get all our updates and you'll see there are big announcements coming up in future shows. Go ahead, Anushri. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No worries. So I'm great friends with Samrat since so long time, and
Yeah.
myself and him, we have great chats over what's going on, what's new in the technology world, and up in the market. So it's just my curiosity to find out what's this all about.
Yeah, awesome. And Lauren, over to
Yeah,
you.
very very excited to be here. I'm popping in from the East Coast of the United States and working with John Wolpart on building out a use case for baseline protocol. And I highly resonate with Mohan, for example, because I came to this space knowing that I have this dream to see enterprise blockchains, and here I am, trying to really live my dream. So I'm really excited to be here, with all of you. So as for the use case, that we're building out, we mentioned it as well on the or John mentioned it, I think, on the last Indian baseline hours, but
Yeah.
also we mention it almost practically every time
Yeah.
because we are working on invoicing. So an invoicing solution related to baseline. And I forget who it was, but someone on this call actually mentioned last time about some blockchain invoicing solution that the Indian government was looking into. So I know that really piqued John's interest, and it piqued mine as well because
Hmm.
I am doing market research basically to understand the market for invoicing and
Hmm.
that supply chain.
That
So
was from
just
Decenter. I believe that's a chap from Decenter.
Yeah. No, so I
oh,
think
yes, that's
yeah, there are exchanges which are running here in India, and they're all government regulated, and two of them
mhm.
are JVs. So only there's only one private player in the exchange market on voices. So you and I we should talk about it. I will give you a lot of inputs. I have current projects going on with a customer who's 18 years old in the invoicing business, invoice processing business.
Oh yeah, we should
So
talk again, Samrat.
absolutely, absolutely.
And
So
also, just to, sorry to put out there
yeah, yeah, please, please. Yeah,
as well, if anyone, of course, wants to help out with this project for the baseline protocol, just feel free to contact me on Slack. You can see that my name here is Lauren Gibson. Just find me there, ping me, and we can talk invoicing.
awesome,
Go ahead,
awesome.
Samrat.
And
Thank you.
yeah, Lauren brings in a very important point. How do people get on ramp? How do people get involved with baseline? You have to go to baseline-protocol.org, and all our channels are available there. You could sign up. You could log into Slack. You could also come on the YouTube channel. This show goes live every Saturday, 6 p.m. And there's also another show which happens, which has the larger community. It happens 9:30 p.m. India time, noon Eastern time on Wednesdays. So yeah, let's begin with today's agenda. So today's agenda was, and I'm sure people are going to be watching on YouTube later on. I'm going to be creating a playlist. So today's agenda was to create business value. Why is baseline important? Let's all bring in our perspectives. And of course, if for example, Anushri is new. Ajo has been following baseline for quite some time. So yeah, we can start with John. John, what do you think? What's the business value you think baseline carries?
Samrat, I don't think I still have understood baseline
Fully
totally
grasp
to,
it. Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yes. But then the little that I understand, I think baseline is bridging that gap of the siloed world of, I think that's the promise that attracted me here.
Yeah.
That there are a lot of siloed projects that are going on. And if you have to scale beyond that private club
Yeah.
thing, you need to have a way in which you can tie all those transactions together into a public solution or public
Yeah.
mainnet, as you guys are saying that. So,
Yeah.
uh, so that's the promise that baseline brings in. And now, how do we bring it to light, and how do we actually start using it? I am not yet clear, but if you are
Sure.
able to do that, if you are able to tie that thing together, then everything that happens in private without bringing those data onto the public network, but yet being able to interoperate between different uh, ecosystems,
Yeah.
uh, and then probably once that particular thing comes in, then a lot more use cases can be tied together. Yeah. So I'm still
Absolutely.
thinking
Absolutely.
about it. Still thinking about it. Let's see how this
So
discussion
we
goes
have
on.
coined a tagline which says secure, private, open source, multi-party workflow synchronization. So I think that is something which is really powerful. It's so intense. All these words coming together in one sentence.
Yeah.
It's really
I think it's
saying,
important for us to just dive into all of those, Samrat.
yeah,
Secure, right? Every company needs security.
yeah,
I know John likes to say that this is, as you said, it's a verified, so it's a verifiable database. So you don't have to go through a third party, an intermediary, to verify it because it's just already verified. So you're reducing that time for
yeah,
verification. Multi-party, of course, as we know, we don't have to deal with all these different systems. We would be able to just deal with one system and have that trust factor there. And then
yeah,
workflow, right? That's what we're trying to improve, is to improve the flow of
yeah,
information, the flow of goods, the flow of services.
yeah.
And yeah.
Bring in efficiency, increase productivity. I think that's the eventual goal. Mohan, what's your perspective? What's the business value that one can derive out of this? So imagine people are going to be watching this, and I'm sure we are going to make sure that people are watching this. So
So,
what
so
is your message for for bringing people on board?
yeah, so I've been looking at this, and I can't say that I have it's still an evolving space, but the way I kind of came into it, kind of trying to understand, I know what the enterprise integration companies do, right? I mean, they build
Yeah,
adapters to systems. They have models of what data and data is in a system, and then it's basically trying to kind of make it easy to have a one system approach, as Lauren mentions, to bringing business processes out of each of these silos so that anybody can use it, right? But
yeah,
that's a much more difficult thing to do because you got to integrate. You actually have to integrate with specific protocols, so you have to use adapters and so on and so forth. And it also deals with a closed enterprise model. So if you have a an auto supply chain, you
yeah,
have the distributors, you got the suppliers. Fundamentally, you've got to integrate upstream, downstream, and you're kind of locked in, right? I mean, and whatever the policies are inside is what's going to control. So if you have an invoice and you are not getting paid, well,
mm,
that's really, how do you get it resolved? You got to get it resolved within that system, and you may not get a resolution on that. The way I look at baseline is that you still have those private workflows, the workflows as
mm,
Lauren put it, is that where you're sending messages between, say, an Excel and an SAP system, or an Excel and an Excel, and these are synchronized. So that's a little more like a traditional enterprise integration model, because you
yeah,
have an adapter for Excel on one side,
yeah,
and which converts it into a common model, and on the other side it's either Excel or it's something else, but there's a
yeah,
common model, right?
yeah,
But the moment you have a workflow, you're generating um, sort of synchronizing truths, if you will, right? What do I know, and so on. So if you have a product catalog, you're making sure that you update the product catalog, and so I see the latest product catalog. And if it's if the product that I'm looking at, or I assume that was going to exist, no longer exists, then my contract is no longer valid, right? So
Yeah.
you kind of you have agreements. You're able to generate you know, you know, sort of a common working. But when you actually want to generate a truth that you want to make public, then you write it into the Ethereum mainnet. So in that case, you sort of say, well, I've got an invoice here. This invoice is complete. You know, all things are verified. It's of this quality. You know, assuming there's a way of verifying the quality, that gets written out into the public chain, so that someone who's not part of the private workflow can still deal with it, right? Some finance it, etc. So the multi-party thing, for example, it's private, but then you can also have a multi-party thing on the public chain. So someone might look at the invoice for some sort of one purpose, another one might look at it for financing. But in the private workspace, you're looking at really conducting workflows in a way that only you know what's happening. But then the moment you want to write it out to the public, then you're able to say that this is legit. So the inventory is legit, the invoice is legit, and so I can now do something with it without knowing who it is from, what it's about, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's the interesting part. The part is, and I was actually mentioning that perhaps this could get integrated into a traditional enterprise integration platform.
Absolutely.
Right? Which would be an easy win, because they have all these backend integrations, all these BAPIs and BAPs and everything else. And so now they'll be able to put a evidence on the public mainnet, and you can then sort of say, I can see, so that's proof positive, right? You don't have any questioning of that. But the one thing I think that was raised recently, which I still am not completely sure of, is privacy versus transparency. And that's the thing, because in the Ernst Young conference on blockchains and supply chains, the whole idea was transparency. I can, if I've got a bottle of wine, and the bottle of wine comes from a certain process, certain vineyards, etc., I can look at that and say, okay, this is indeed a legit bottle of wine that comes from that winery, this vintage, etc. Now, how does that work with respect to baseline is something that's still not clear to me. I hope that helps.
Well, in terms of finance, I'm just thinking about it in the finance side, right? What we're trying to work with, I know, is zero knowledge proofs, and I'm not a technical person, but I do know that is some way to add some sort of privacy. But John's main thing is to say that we're not going to put data on the blockchain, right?
Exactly.
So,
no, I think this should be our hashtag. So currently we're running hashtags in baseline in India, but I think that we should run this as a hashtag. No data on the blockchain, only proofs and hashes go on the chain. Extremely important. And I think both of you brought in really good points. Very strong points in Mohan and Lauren. One, this is a non-conventional way of synchronizing conventional systems. I think that is something absolutely empowering. And sure, Lauren, you can go ahead on audio. The other one is Mohan, as you rightly said, it has to be absolutely no data in whatsoever manner goes out into the public domain. So I think that is something which needs to be protected and preserved. And I think that is the reason why we're using zero knowledge proofs. So
exactly. And I just wanted to apologize. I do have to move to audio, but these are the thoughts that we're all thinking about. We have to think about if we want privacy or transparency, and of course, in a bigger blockchain space, we're thinking about are public or private blockchains going to win, right? So we know these questions exist, and it's just very exciting to be able to discuss them aloud with other people.
Yeah, but to the point of public versus private, the problem with public is who's private with respect to private. Whose private is it? Is it IBM's private? Is it Oracle's private? Right. The question is, if it's Oracle's private, then Oracle is setting the policies. So there's no way to kind of say there's a contract here and I need the contract enforced. And in the case of the public blockchain, once a contract is out, the contract is out. Right? So I think that's the beauty of it. The only issue right now, obviously, is the cost. But that's what I think a lot of work is going on, where they talk about trying to do as much in layer 2 before they push it down to layer 1, which is still a little bit of an unknown, like exactly what's going to happen there, I think. But I think the specifications are kind of being worked out right now. But I agree with you. I mean, from my perspective, enterprise integration, the problem is you have APIs, you have sets of APIs. And the question is, who can access this? So you say, okay, I'm going to give you a login because you are this kind of a partner, you're going to have this login, right? But then what happens if with APIs, you've got hacking that can happen,
Exactly.
or with APIs, you might get access to some data set or some data inadvertently because the designers didn't fix it, right? So I think here, what you're saying is, why do you need access to that? Well, I need to do A, B, and C. Well, if that A, B, and C can be done without knowing any of the details on the public blockchain, queuing off the public blockchain, then just do it there. So I think that's the advantage of baseline.
That's the biggest advantage which I see. And I think I just put up this slide because I think this is really exciting to see 50% of organizations are using very simple basic web-based data exchange portals, and over about 30% are organizations which are using, they're just sending things over email. Look at PDFs, emails, etc. And you know what? Look at the 33%. Now that 33% is the one which I want to talk to you about the most. This is the problem area. This is the problem area. 33% of all the invoices are we have some trouble. And Lauren, I want to bring you in here. So talk to us about your past experience from the invoices world. What do you think is the real issue when it comes to invoices being exchanged between companies?
Yeah. So there, of course, invoices, right? There are two processes or two parties, right? There's the accounts receivables and the accounts payables. And the accounts receivables, those are the suppliers, right? They are supplying the money to their buyers, and the accounts payable buyers, they have to pay. So what we have seen, though, is that a lot of these suppliers, especially small and medium-sized businesses who are dealing with these large buyers, let's say, everyone knows Walmart. So I'll just say Walmart, for example. Walmart is a huge buyer of tons of products, and they and what I have found is that with certain suppliers, and I just went on an interview yesterday, or I just interviewed someone yesterday who this was not the case, but so it sounds like with certain suppliers, we find that Walmart is taking the chance to pay at the very end of the net 30, the net 60. And this, of course, is not great for small and medium-sized businesses. They want to get paid immediately because they are a small, medium business, and because they need the cash quickly. So what we are trying to work on is if we could baseline the invoicing process, then we could have like a place where all of the suppliers could be for a Walmart, for any large company that's working all throughout the world. So that's one part.
Awesome. And you remember, Lauren, when we were having our chat, I was mentioning to you that why do we even need invoices, when we already know what's happening. The transaction has happened, goods have reached when they were supposed to reach. There are It's only the hold up because people want to verify things. And that is why the net 30, net 60. And I want to bring in the banker here onto the discussion. So what happens, Ajo, if net 30 goes away or net 60 goes away by baselining transactions? So imagine the vendor systems and the buyer systems are all synchronized using baseline. So all transactions, any piece of data, any small bit of data which is changed in one system gets reflected on the other. And if at all they're not authorized to make those changes, the records get debased. That's a different discussion. But what happens is um, that there is absolutely no verification reconciliation required. So what would a bank think like?
So my personal view, again,
Yeah,
disclaimer here.
of course, of
Uh,
course.
yeah. So see, what Lauren just now said is the relationship or the deal that a particular supplier and a buyer has, and that is because of the size and the purchasing power that each counterparty has, right?
Hmm.
So Walmart would still, even though I don't think Walmart, because it's a bi-party interaction that is happening between a supplier and a buyer, so Walmart does not have a doubt on what is the value that is provided in the invoice because it's a bi-party, right? Both of them know each other, and so
Yeah.
but the but the but the value of blockchain and immutable record comes in when there is a third party involved. When there's a tripartite interaction happens, and that's what is happening in the time of when the moment a financier comes into picture, right?
Yeah.
And the financier, like a bank, wants to be sure that the data that is
Exactly.
provided uh,
Exactly.
by by a particular counterparty for financing is true or not.
Yeah.
Now, so what the most the one person or the one party who would be most benefited by this baselining would be the financier,
Hmm.
because that party would know for sure that, excuse me, I'll just go out of video.
Okay.
Yeah. So the one party that wants the data to be sure is the
Hmm.
financier, and
Hmm.
that's what I think blockchain brings value. Now, what will happen in case of a baseline product or the way you said about a multi-party workflow is
Yeah.
a particular network can be created where one financier sits at the center, and
Hmm.
then there is a community of buyer or a supplier in that. Uh, but then those interactions, those invoices rests, and the authenticity of those invoices raised in that network remains within that
Yeah.
network. If you are
Yeah.
able to create a way in which these ecosystems or these networks can speak and need not authenticate these transactions, and
Yeah.
then it brings a lot of value. And I think
Yeah.
that's the direction in which we are moving.
Yeah. No, totally. So I think, this is where we are currently sitting. If we are sitting here and then we're looking around us and we have suppliers and we're saying, you know what, we're sharing information with so many parties. And then imagine, you in your example, you took the central party to be the bank. Now I say, let's say this one is the bank, and there's an organization which is dealing with, like Walmart, which is dealing with so many entities, and we're doing an India show. So I'm going to call it something else. I'm going to call it Airtel, for example. So let's say this is Airtel, and this is dealing with multiple vendors on in their multiple circles. Now imagine them looking at from the inside of the organization to looking at outside and saying, I have so much data to reconcile, and there are 400 of my staff just working on doing these reconciliations with the vendors. And so both sides productivity is lost. And then of course there is risk management. You bring in a very interesting point, Ajo, which is risk management. So for banks or even for any sort of counterparties, baseline can be used for risk management, and that is something which I'm also working on, by the way. So That's when I jumped on the ship, and I really caught my interest that, yeah, this something like this is really missing from the risk management world, and I think we do need um, you know something like baseline to come up.
Actually, I see risk management. I mean, we've been talking a lot about financing, right?
hmm,
Invoices, like third-party financing of invoices as
yeah,
being a use case. It would seem to me that risk, as you know, John is pointing out and as Kishore is pointing out, is even more interesting because
yeah,
that, like, so how do I trust anybody's anybody
invoice,
in what this invoice or
yeah,
state of affairs
yeah,
in what their business is for me to give working capital loans, for
yeah,
example, or whatever, right? And I think the risk assessment is, I think, that this party has been reliable, and they deal with, they commit to their deliverables on time, etc.,
yeah.
etc. The thing is, that's huge, I think, personally.
Yeah, the opportunity is absolutely huge, and I think Lauren, John, and the team is they're going to be the first ones making tons of money out of Baseline. But yeah, as you see here, it's a huge organization dealing with multiple counterparties, and then what is really important to note is the last line, which is it says it's there is asymmetric flow of information and it's all opaque. So baseline is taking all that away. That's the power of this new protocol which we're developing. And by the way, for people who are joining us on YouTube, it's it's important to mentally place baseline at the right place. It's not a blockchain, but it can be the best way to interface with a blockchain. Any conventional system, put baseline in the middle, let it act like a middleware, and then it interfaces with any other blockchain or any other system of record. So it can be a Hyperledger node on the other side, or it can be SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, can be anything else on the other side. So imagine it to be like a middleware, just sitting in the middle, absolutely under the hood technology. It's not going to be showing out in the world, and that is why it appeals to only a handful of us. That yeah, those who realize the power of this kind of synchronization. The CISOs, the CIOs and the CISOs are the ones who are most concerned when two systems interface, and especially beyond organization boundaries. So that is the time when baseline comes in and says, you know what, I'm going to make sure that no data ever leaves, not even a single bit of data leaves your organization, your perimeter. So that is where, and while you still go ahead and do your business whichever way you want, you outsource your non-core operations, you buy, get things delivered, do high C sales or whatever. So that's something which, that's where I see business value coming in. Any kinds of places where there was a lot of non-trusting parties relying on single source of information. Anushri, do you have any examples of transactions where reconciliations are important, or validations take months, or reconciliations takes months?
Yeah, sure, Samrat. So I was just thinking in my head as well
Yeah.
that telecommunication is definitely an industry which has very high TPS,
Hmm.
low latency kind of
Yeah.
traffic, which
Yeah.
is available in the system.
Yeah.
So coming out from traditional systems that we have been dealing with all this while, by traditional I mean Oracle database or cloud-based technologies.
Yeah.
What we have is that there are incoming traffics from the system, from the outside network, and
Hmm.
coming into our systems, and we have to process those data which is coming on a very high TPS, right?
Yeah.
So at the same time processing those traffic and then dumping out an output so that those output can be utilized for billing systems to
Yeah.
invoice the customer, right? So
Yeah.
this is like a very high level flow of telecommunication that
Absolutely.
we have been dealing. And as a solution architect, I've been looking forward towards providing some interface which can perform reconciliation of the traffic that is coming in. And
Yeah.
while we process, we should not drop any packet, right?
Yep.
And so there is a reconciliation mechanism that is required once we have done the processing.
Hmm.
I'm just trying to see how baseline can benefit such systems. because these are all, 3G, 5G, now 5G systems. So it's all over Dockers and containers. These are all microservices that's running in the system, running over HTTP REST interfaces. So just trying to see how that kind of reconciliation can be performed using baseline. That is one of the aspects coming from telecommunication background. Another aspect is another reconciliation that happens is towards our billing systems, right? So once the call records have been processed by the telco charging system, then those records are passed to the billing systems, and those bills and invoices have to be reconciled, that nothing has been missed out. That in itself currently, I can say, like in my project, it's a manual verification that only happens for like 2 to 5% of the invoices, because subscriber base is in like millions. So
Anushree, sorry, I just like to chime in and say I would love to interview you as well.
Yeah. Lauren, meet Anushree.
It's so nice to meet you. Hello. I actually got on a call. One of the interviews I did yesterday was with, so I'm also doing my master's in business in Washington, D.C. And one of my colleagues, thank you. And one of my colleagues, he works for Samsung, and he works under the services department of Samsung. He reports directly to the CEO, and he was talking to me about their invoicing problems. And I just love to talk to you because he's talked about working with these types of telecommunications providers. So it would be great to get your perspective as well. I love these connections.
Awesome.
Awesome. Sure, Lauren. It would be great to connect. I'll probably drop in my email ID in here in the chat, and then we can connect.
Anushree, you have to come all the way to the Slack channel and hit the subscribe button as well. Then only you get to meet.
Sure.
So
I'll do that.
I'm happy people draw some value out of these calls each time we do this, and this is just the second episode. We're just getting started. So telecom, Anushree, thank you so much for bringing in that perspective. I think it's a field which is ripe for baseline. I know I've seen a huge telecom player which is like a JV between multiple telecom providers here. It's called Indus Towers here, and what they do is they provide infrastructure as a service, the telecom infrastructure as a service, and what that means is that all calls are streamed through their infrastructure, whether they're originating from whichever network. So that also means that they have to do a lot of reconciliations in real time and charge those telecom providers. And I think it sits in very well with their sort of business model. And one is, of course, exploring business models which already exist. Look at the one which I've just projected here. It's like this is the one this is the way we've already been doing business, but then using this capability, now it's up to us that we can imagine new business models. So happy to brainstorm on these sessions, whenever you are ready to discuss ideas. Mohan, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting use case because one of my friends actually is the CEO of a company called Beyond. Beyond does a lot of real-time analytics, and they may do reconciliation as well for telcos in the US. And he was telling me one of the problems they have with blockchains is the performance, because they're dealing with, as Anushree was pointing out, at such a high throughput rate. And so, but the interesting thing that came from what Anushree was saying is that perhaps sampling, just taking a sample and baselining that as a statistical sample, baseline that and see if it complies. I guess if we can reconcile it, on baseline, that might be a reasonable approach. I mean, would you agree, Anushree? I mean, that could be sort of where you kind of straddle between the performance world and the non-performance blockchain environment.
Well, the auditor inside me tells me there's a huge sampling risk here.
I think the performance aspect would be a very main point of concern when it comes to telecommunication industry, because with 5G coming in, definitely we need to take care of the TPS. that's
Yeah.
being handled. So I would
Yeah.
want, I was, while we all were discussing, I was just thinking like the synchronization that we are discussing here,
Yeah.
how, do we have any profiles around how frequent is the
It's like a work group. It's
synchronization
like a,
that's happening?
yeah. So honestly, it's like a work group which gets created, and then your systems are always in sync. So there's no batches or any lags. They're always in sync. And that's the beauty. And to be able to do that, to be able to synchronize two systems, um, um always, you need a network which is always on. You need a reference point, and that is where blockchain comes in. That is why we've been talking about baseline in conjunction with blockchain, because you need something which is always on to be able to synchronize with that. It's like GMT, how we use GMT to synchronize our time. So imagine mainnet, and that is where if you go through documentation, you'll see a lot of references to mainnet. So mainnet is an always on network. Now that network depends. We can have a choice of networks. It can be Ethereum public, mainnet, or it can be any other network which is big enough, which qualifies to be called a mainnet. There's also a qualification criteria by the way, in the standard that we are developing right now. So yeah, that brings me also to an update about baseline standard. So the protocol is being developed, and the standards and specifications are being written. We are working very fast towards V1 release. There are two reference implementations which are already live. So anybody who wants to jump on board and start experimenting with this open source technology, they can start using BRI1 and BRI2, which are already available on our GitHub. So if you go to baseline-protocol.org, you're going to see a link to the GitHub repo as well. So moving on, I have a formal definition of baseline protocol, which I generally like discussing on our shows. Well, Biswashri was supposed to be here to talk about the technical on ramp for people who wanted to join in as developers, but she could not make it. She had some emergency and she had to step out. So I'm going to use this time and talk about the formal definition of baseline. So I think this is really key. I just love the way it is written here, that it is just a set of tools and techniques. It's not anything beyond that. It's just a set of tools and techniques, and that's what fundamentally protocols are. So again, for perspective, this is something which I realized when I was talking to one of my friends, and I think the easiest way to understand something is when you try and explain that same thing to somebody else and say, here is what this means, and um, this is how you go about understanding it. So
I totally
so
feel that, Samrat. I was an English teacher as well, and I'm very
awesome.
proficient in the English language now. Teaching someone is the best way to learn.
No, that's awesome. So yeah, I was actually I was actually talking to a friend of mine, and I quickly said, you know what, just for perspective, let me also talk about other protocols which have been developed in the world. There is TCP/IP, which is enabling most of the internet, and there is FTP, file transfer protocol. A lot of system to system, and I think Mohan can jump in here and talk about olden days of interfacing two systems, where FTP used to be the golden place where one system would dump data and the other would pick it up. And then cool protocol, WebRTC. Now WebRTC, it's not very famous, but WebRTC is the protocol which enables video calls like this one. So these are kind of protocols, and now comes another one which is called baseline. It has got a cool new name. It is not cryptic as the other ones which I just spoke about, but this is the cool new protocol. So it's just a set of tools and techniques. It's a set of libraries which enable any system, any product, to become capable of synchronizing in a private and secure manner with any number of parties. So now that is a huge part for product companies. If they want to come on board and join the baseline protocol, it's all open source. People can come in, sign up, sign the CLA. Of course, it's available on GitHub, and start contributing. So with that, I think we come to the top of the hour, so we can. Uh,
Hey, Samrat, I
uh,
wanted to just add one thing to what you
yeah,
just
please,
said.
please, yeah,
In the old days when the military used to, I guess they do it today too, when they used to send coded messages, right? You had, only certain people could understand certain things, right? So you had security clearance, you had a certain crypto system that you were using, and you sent you all your messages, right? So, it's a lot like that. I think when you talked about all these different protocols, and you talked
yeah,
about baseline. Baseline basically says I use crypto, and I send a piece of thing and says this is the truth, and you can
yeah,
verify that I'm a legit person saying this is the truth. I mean, I'm the one who's put this thing out, and so you can
hmm.
verify that okay, it's coming from a trusted source, and it's crypto, and I'm only being and I'm only sort of seeing certain pieces of information that is public and the rest is all private. It's essentially providing that cryptography part, right?
Yeah,
Which I think is what's beautiful about it.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, 100%. Um, so with that, any closing thoughts? Any of you? For people who are watching us on YouTube, I'm going to create a playlist, and we're all going to be showing up there.
Thanks, Samrat. This was great.
Thank you. Good
So,
discussion. Andrew, you want to say
yeah,
something?
So I'm not looking forward for a technical session where we get to know more about how this whole thing works. I mean, if I mean
Absolutely.
I'm assuming there should be some repository. Is it available already in the Baseline Community YouTube
Yeah,
channel?
yeah.
Okay,
So there are explainer videos on the same YouTube channel. There are there's tons of documentation on baseline-protocol.org. You go to the website. And we are planning to have technical sessions as well. So we are going to start with a series of business sessions first, and then we start with the technical sessions when the right partners have agreed. We are also
right.
talking to some of the largest companies in India, technology companies, to as well as other businesses, to come on board and start talking about the value that potentially Baseline can bring to them. I mean, I know of a company which has 400 people just consolidating their balance sheet. Imagine what Baseline could do to these guys. Uh, so there are tons of opportunities. India is looked as, see, the international community on Baseline is looking towards India now to take up, to embrace Baseline, and the dev community to start developing uh, products using the protocol. So that's where we are. Anushree, any closing thoughts, or have we got?
Oh, it was a great discussion. Thank you, guys, and thanks, Samrat, for organizing this. And it was very informative. I had no freaky idea about Baseline before this, and I'm now
Okay,
very much interested. So it would
awesome.
be great to just
One
keep
baseliner
tab
at a
on.
time. That's how we go.
Sure.
So welcome to the
Yeah.
club of believers in Baseline. I hope this delivers some value to you personally and professionally. Thank you
Yep.
so much, all of
Very
you, for
looking
making it.
forward.
Thank you so much, all
Thanks.
of you, for making it. Cheers. Thank you. Bye.